Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second stage of Zwift Games 2025, and even though it is another sprint stage, it's going to be completely different to Mercury Madness. Today we are racing on another brand new route. It is called Scotland Smash, and compared to Mercury Madness, it's almost never flat. It starts with one full lap of Glasgow Crit Circuit, that continues into Highlands doing a round tour around the Scotland map, then returns back to Glasgow for another lap of Glasgow Crit Circuit, and then exits the city one more time for an uphill finish at the cliffside banner. Which means that among other things you are doing Clyde Kicker twice, and for the first time very early in the race. And it is very important to ride this short climb correctly. You need to push really hard, and not only on the climb. It could be very tempting to ease up on the effort when the steepest section finishes, but it is actually imperative to continue pushing at least until the banner, because otherwise you might actually get dropped by the fastest riders. You can see that even though I was pushing quite good watts, the group was actually spreading quite a bit. And while it's okay if that happens a little bit, you don't want to be too far back, because on these rollers that follow the Clyde Kicker, it is very difficult to chase any breakaways. And I have to say that the effort at the start of this race was actually extremely high. It might not look like so on the chart, but after the last race where I ended up on the podium, I increased my threshold power by 33 watts according to my Xert calculation. So the colors on the chart are actually calculated from a way higher number than in the previous race. I should also probably mention that I'm doing this race in a higher category than I was doing the stage 1. This is still B category, but it is the higher B of the two. Let's call it B1. So compared to stage 1, when I was at the top of the category, here I am firmly in the middle, and I can tell you I'm feeling it really hard. But this is still technically a sprint stage, so if I don't do well on this one, I have no chance of doing well in the next 3. Be that as it may, it is still a very rolling course, and every elevation change on the route is going to shift the group's effort significantly, and you are actually able to see that right now. But during the winter of racing, I actually found out about 3 things that are helping me cope with those sharp effort changes. I was actually talking about all of them in my previous videos, but I actually want to mention them again, because on courses like this they are absolutely essential. And the first one is the position on the bike. As you can see, I'm riding this uphill on the drops, and I'm actually trying to do so for every climb I encounter on the route, because I found out that the shifted position on the bike actually helps me engage the pedals in a different way than when I'm riding on the hoods. And I'm not saying you should go ahead and do that as well, it might not work for everyone. It is only my assumption, but I expect it has something to do with which muscles in your legs are stronger. But for me, I can honestly tell that it makes all the difference in the world. It still doesn't mean that I am suddenly a climber. I will still get dropped on longer climbs, but it at least allows me to compete with my group on courses like this. And that is something I wouldn't be able to do only a few months ago. The second thing I do differently lately is connected to my effort management. In the past, I was riding unnecessarily hard on the flat sections and only increased that effort very slightly on the uphills. Now I'm trying to do the exact opposite, and you can actually watch that right now. On the flat sections, I'm actually riding as easily as possible, often hanging at the back of the group in the draft, but when the climb comes, I really hammer it down for as long as is necessary or until I'm dropped. In the past, I was actually quite afraid to do that, because I thought that if I burned too many matches, I wouldn't be able to continue after the climb ends. But there are actually 2 arguments that help me change my mindset on this. Firstly, if you get dropped, it doesn't matter how much you have left in the tank to continue, because, well, you are dropped. Secondly, even though the effort on the climb is usually crazy, when you reach the top, all of the riders will be hurting and all of them will want to recover at least a little bit. So I guess the takeaway point is ride as hard as you can on the uphill and recover when you reach the top. The crazy effort will never last forever. And I actually wanted to show this here on top of Breakaway Bray. But unfortunately, the guys here decided that reaching the top was opportunity for a breakaway attempt, so they pushed down the pace, and that meant that we needed to work for a little bit longer. But as you will be able to see, that attempt ended as quickly as it started, and here we are already descending from the breakaway bray in a very calm manner. And the third thing that actually allows me to handle races like this better is trainer difficulty, lowering it to about 30% to be exact. I focused on this topic a lot in my videos in the last few months, and there have always been quite heavy discussions about it, often quite heated. A lot of you guys perceive lowering trainer difficulty as cheating, and while I don't share this point of view with you, I can definitely see where it's coming from, because it does give you an advantage, especially on courses like this. Yes, you still need to produce the same watts to propel you forward, but if you lower your trainer difficulty, especially on courses like this, you can do so without shifting every 2 seconds, and that reduced torque results in lower effort, and that will undeniably help you perform. But if we establish that, why I don't think it's cheating? Well, for one simple reason. It's available for free to everyone. All riders doing these races can pull down the slider, and I know that a lot of you don't want to do that because then it's not like riding outdoors, but Zwift isn't outdoor riding. You've got tools and it's up to you whether you will choose to use them. In the meantime, we have moved back to Glasgow, and this is the second Clyde kicker, and I actually sort of slept on this one. Or to be more accurate, I actually didn't have that much left in the tank by this point. My heart rate is over 180 at this point, and you can clearly see that I'm simply hanging in the back of this group. There's another breakaway attempt from the front, and my only hope is that the group is going to chase it and I will be somehow able to hang in the back, which I was somewhat successful at. I had to pop my drafting boost here because otherwise I would get dropped flat out. You could also see that my Windows computer actually decided to update itself at this point and threw me back onto the desktop. Thankfully, I managed to alt-tab back very quickly, but still had to basically force myself to not get dropped. But yeah, I somehow survived and got back into the peloton, and I knew that if I was going to survive the little uphill on the cliffs, I might be able to actually sprint for position again. I knew that it probably wasn't going to be podium because at this point I was super tired. Not only tired, I actually felt a little bit sick already. But there was still chance for a good position and I was going to take it. So I dropped back to the end of this group, trying to recover as much as possible, breathe as deep as possible, but you can already see their attacks going in the front. 1 kilometer to the finish line, and this was the end of my podium ambitions because there was not a chance that I would be able to chase those guys. Even just hanging in the group, you can see that I'm deeply in the red, doing around 400 watts. My heart rate crossed 185 BPM, but I decided I would give it one last push. At this point I was at the 29th place, but I increased the effort even more, albeit only seated, and here is the finish line. You can see on my face that it doesn't taste well for me, but I'm increasing my power to over 600 watts and trying to force my way into top 20, which as you can see I was actually able to do. I finished this race on 18th spot, my racing score increased by another 5 points to 512. And I can only be thrilled about this result because our time was only 16 seconds slower than the result of the A group, the 570 to 700. To finish things off, here's my exert analysis of the race, and you can see that I almost touch my potential once again. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you on stage 3.